Hello and welcome. I'm excited to be here. I'm Andrea Amador. I'm leading the Grief Relief Support live stream series. It's all the way through January 9th, and that's going to be free. And it is for women who have been hurt by toxic relationships, widows and women who've been hurt by toxic relationships. And if you've ever struggled with a toxic relationship, a difficult person, you know how incredibly difficult it is. I, um, I've definitely had my share of dealing with toxic family members and toxic family coming from a background history of being raised by my family was really dysfunctional. And that kind of set the bar for my expectations of people in my life. So, anyway, I wanted to talk to you. I shared something this morning on TikTok, but the thing is, I didn't get a chance to upload the video that was really explaining what it was that I was sharing on TikTok. So I'll just step back and explain it all to you. I woke up this morning around 5 a.m. because that's my time. I went to the bathroom. I switched on the light and nothing happened. Total darkness. So I went into the adjoining room, switched on the light went on. I realized that the light bulb in the bathroom was out. And I've changed light bulbs before, no big deal, do it all the time. But the thing is, I'm right now living in my sister in law's house with my son, and the light bulbs are way, way up high. So the fixture was about 9 feet, maybe 10 feet higher than I could handle. So, anyway, I got the ladder and I pulled the ladder into a position. It's a tiny bathroom, narrow. So I pulled the ladder into a position where it was um, perpendicular to the floor. So it would just be, I gave myself a little bit of space so that I could hold on to the stability of the door in its frame or the wall. So I climbed up the stairs and it was morning, and I realized that my legs were not feeling very strong. They felt a little weak, and I was on the first rung of the ladder. And I thought, oh my God, I'm actually afraid to continue because all of a sudden I was just flooded with all of these negative and fearful thoughts. Like, what would happen if I get up on the top rung where I need to be, and all of a sudden I fall down? And what if I can't? What if I'm crippled? What if I can't move? What if I mean, a million things were hitting me all at once. And so I thought, wait a minute, let me just calm down here. What do I do in instances like this? Well, what I do is I do a technique that I have used and relied upon since 2004, and it's called emotional freedom techniques. And it's a stress relief method that like works like crazy. So I started doing tapping. It's also called tapping, and it's just like this. And I'll tell you exactly what I said. As I was standing on the first rung of the ladder, and it's just basic EFT. And and I applied it to the situation of being afraid of falling from the ladder. And I was just on the first rung of the ladder, okay? I was maybe 6 inches up off the ground. Not a big deal. But anyway, I'll tell you what I said. I stood on the ladder in my bare feet because I figured that was the best way to really grip on, to feel the rung of the ladder. I went, even though I'm terrified of falling from the ladder, I deeply and completely love and accept myself. Even though I'm terrified of falling down and breaking my neck and never being able to move again, I deeply and completely love and accept myself. And then what you do in tapping or EFT is you do a reminder phrase. I'm so afraid of falling down. What if I never walk again? I can't do this. I'm afraid of heights. I'm so afraid. What if I fall down? What if I never walk again? What if I'm paralyzed? Now, by that time, I will tell you, I'm standing on the first rung of the ladder, just 6 inches up off the ground. And I laughed because I realized, you know what, this is ridiculous. I'm on the first rung of the ladder. So I felt, okay, let me go to the second rung of the ladder right now. So I went to the second rung of the ladder, and it was a little bit more challenging, and I felt a little afraid. So I thought, okay, let me continue on. Let me continue on with the tapping. And so I'm on the second rung of the ladder. So I'm going to say maybe I'm maybe now I'm like 12 inches off the ground. At the most, 18 inches off the ground. So I'm going, I'm so afraid. I'm so afraid. I can't do this. I can't do this. I'm going to hurt myself. I'm afraid. I'm afraid. I can't do this. And I breathe. And I just keep tapping. And so I look down and I realized, well, like, I'm only 12 inches up off the ground. And then I get a little bit more courageous. So I go up one more rung. Now I'm on the third rung of the ladder. Maybe it's about 30 inches up off the ground, let's say. And so I'm continuing to tap. I'm saying, I'm so scared. I'm so scared. I'm so scared. I'm so scared that I'm going to fall off the ladder. I'm so afraid I'm going to fall off the ladder. And then I think to myself, okay, wait a minute. Maybe I can get some help. Because in the interim, I noticed I was, switching my weight from my left to my right foot because my right leg tends to be my weaker leg. I must have injured myself recently. At some point, I think I pulled a muscle. And so the right leg is much weaker than the left leg. And so there I was on the ladder. I started doing this when I was on the second rung of the ladder, and that is to switch my weight from my left to my right foot to test my balance, to see how well I could balance on my left on one leg and then on my right on one leg, just gently picking my foot up just a little bit. And I realized, ooh, that's not as strong as I'd like to be. So I kept on tapping. And as I was tapping, I was thinking about possible other solutions. And I realized that it wasn't long before or soon after that my son was about to wake up. He was sleeping in several rooms down. And I heard him moving around in his room. And I thought, okay, I'm going to hold on. I'm going to keep on tapping for fear around, being able to get up the ladder. But I want to do it myself, but I really want him to hold the ladder, to give me that, call it emotional support or whatever. I want that sense of knowing that the ladder is well placed. So as he opened his door, I said, "Hey, P, I'm here in the bathroom. Could you help me with something?" I said, "I'd like you to hold this ladder for me." It's like by now it was like 5:30 in the morning. And so he came, and to make a very long story short, he held it, and then I was able to get the fixture, the fixture cover off of the light bulb, and then unscrew each of the three screws that were holding the fixture in place. So anyway, by the time I finished, I want to say probably I actually got a little cocky because doing the tapping gave me such a sense of comfort around being on the ladder. And after I was on the ladder and I got the bulb out, I think it was the fourth rung of the ladder that I was on. Um, After doing that, I felt confident enough that I did a TikTok, and I called it a ladder selfie or something like that, and um, I was doing it pretty much up in the air. It's really cool. So, to make a very long story short, again, that is what this is for. We all have fears. We all have fears, things that we're afraid of. You know, some things are realistic fears. Like if a dog is chasing you, then you definitely want to find a way of getting out from the dog's, you know, way. But going up a ladder or um, figuring out your next move or doing whatever it is that we convince ourselves that we cannot do, those are imagined fears. And our brains can't tell the difference between an imagined thought and reality. There's a part of our brain, it's called the amygdala. It's in the back of our head, it's a little almond shaped part, and it goes off more than 50 to 100 times a day with false alarms. Think about it. Several times a day, many, many times a day, do you find yourself stopping yourself in your tracks saying, I can't do that? I'm afraid. I don't want to do that. Oh no, that's not for me. Whatever it is, we convince ourselves that we cannot do things that we actually can. And the reason why I gathered you here today, and um, this group specifically is for women who have been hurt by toxic people in their lives, whether that is being estranged from family members who you love, but there's distance between you, or partners, cheating partners, or um, people who are difficult to cope with, anything like that. That kind of behavior, that kind of treatment that is that comes from a person who doesn't have the ability to manage their emotions, that really hits you. If you're a sensitive empath like me, and you have had experience with a lot of people who are either verbally abusive or physically abusive or sexually abusive, there's a lot of triggers that you have. And so when these people come up in your life, it's intimidating and it's frightening, and it makes you think that you're much, much smaller than you are. And I'm going to guess that the way it works is, I actually learned this from working with a pair of marriage therapists, Lori and Bob Hollander of Relationships Works. work, yeah, relationship. You know what I'm saying. And what I learned from the time that I was working with them is that the way it works is that it's our parents and the people who raise us, that they teach us how to value ourselves by the way that they treat us, the way that they talk to us, um, the way that they hold us or carry us as babies, the way that they meet our needs. When I was a kid, it was very, very big. Dr. Spock was the rage. So many mothers and fathers, both parents, thought that Dr. Spock was 100% on target when he said, just let the baby cry it out. Don't go to the baby when the baby is crying. Let them cry. Let them self soothe. They'll figure it out. Well, let me tell you, they don't. A child who is left alone for a long period of time will feel like they've been abandoned. And so many times, if you've had that experience where you had parents and caregivers who neglected you, there's a part of you that feels like, hey, people abandon me. I'm not lovable. I'm not wanted. One of the things that I learned in the time that I was working with Lori and Bob as their social media manager is that I think it's in the 30s or in the 40s, I believe it was, that there was some kind of experiment. I don't remember all the details, but I'll give you the basics. There was an experiment that was done with 40 babies from an orphanage. And it was determined that the 40 babies would be split into two groups. 20 of those children were adopted by foster adoptive parents who were wonderful, and they took care of them, and they fed them, and they clothed them, and they cared for every need of theirs. However, the remaining 20 babies stayed in the orphanage. And the experiment was not to give the babies any more attention and care than they absolutely needed. And what that looked like was a nurse, when the baby cried, a nurse would come in and she would check the baby to see if the baby was wet or, needed a diaper change, or she would feed the baby, or she would burp the baby, swaddle the baby, and then put the baby down. She wouldn't talk to the baby. She wouldn't sing to the baby. She wouldn't hold the baby any longer than the baby needed to be held for the purpose of burping the baby or changing or bathing the baby. The absolute barest of minimums. What happened was that the babies would cry and they would reach for the nurse or nurses. And there was a period of time when the babies stopped reaching. And the babies started to go into themselves, and they started to be quiet. And they started to look like with glass eyes. Well, the short version of this is that the people who did the experiment were so panicked when they saw this. What was happening was that the babies where instead of growing and maturing, they were actually going backwards, reverting, failing to thrive. And I believe they stopped the experiment because the babies were literally dying. They brought several of the babies to adoptive homes in an attempt to rescue the baby, but even in the adopted home, they died. I don't know how many babies lived through this, but it was horrible. And it was determined that we need attention. We need love. We need people to talk to us. We need that stimulation. We need that engagement. And so if you grew up in a home like mine that was chaotic and violent and angry, where there was my stepfather drank and my mother had mental illness. You put a child into that kind of environment, and it's similar to being in that orphanage. You never quite know what's going to happen. So, the reason why I created this stream is to teach you, is to talk with you, and to find out what it is that you're grieving. Because, first and foremost, I wanted to offer an opportunity to women who are grieving toxic relationships and family estrangements over the holidays, because I have struggled with being estranged from a dad I loved for many, many years. And because it was so devastating to me to feel rejected by my dad, it was so earth-shattering to me that I didn't feel loved. I didn't feel welcomed. That for so many years, I thought of my father as the sun and the moon and the stars. And when something happened to change the dynamics in our relationship, he completely turned into a different person. And because of that, I pushed everybody away. This isn't making a lot of sense to you, but I want to go back and share a little bit more about how you can get more support during this period of time. This is a really difficult time for so many, the holidays. I'm a widow, and I belong to several widows groups, and I'm estranged from my father since 2009. And one of the collateral damage from my depression over being estranged from my father is that my daughter and I have lost connection with one another, and we don't talk very much. And it was very, very hard for a long time, until I realized that I think it was really my husband's passing. My husband's passing put so much of my life into perspective. Because as I shared on the previous stream, before my husband passed away, so many of my challenges or problems were really just imagined. They were in my head. I had such an incredibly wonderful life. And because I was just really depressed and sad, I didn't see what was in front of me. And I pushed it away. I pushed so many wonderful people away, and friends and family, just because I couldn't deal with life. So a lot of people are struggling at this time of year because they are consumed with their loss. And they are thinking that losing that person, or in my case, not having that close relationship with my daughter that I used to have, that means that I'll never have it, or that I'm a bad person, or whatever it is. I think I want to draw on the same point that I talked about in the previous stream, and that is that we are very lucky in that we get to choose how things end. We get to create our own meaning for the circumstances in our life. So let's go back to that mirror, the ladder situation that I told you about this morning, where as I stood on the first step of the ladder, I was overcome with a wave of panic, like, oh my gosh, my right leg feels weak. I'm going to fall off the ladder. I can't do it. And I knew at that point, I went, wait a minute. This is just my mind talking. This is not necessarily true. So I started doing the tapping. This is one point. This is called the karate chop point. I'm going to take my glasses off for this. This is called the inner eye point. And by doing this, what you are doing is you are stimulating the end points of meridians. This is the under eye point. This is the under nose. This is the chin point. This is the collarbone. There's several other points, but I don't tend to use them. I'll show you them, a couple of them. This is the underarm, about the midpoint where your bra is. This is the top of the head. And another is your wrists, tapping your wrists together. And what you are doing by doing this tapping is you are calming that part of you, that amygdala that is sending off those warning signals saying, red alert, red alert, red alert, we're going to die, we're going to die. There I was standing on that first rung of the ladder saying, oh my God, I'm going to be paralyzed. So doing the tapping on that first rung, what will happen when you do the tapping, as I do with my clients on calls like this, is the tapping will change your thoughts because it moves energy in the body. And as you move your thoughts and your emotions, you are aware of different insights. And you're able to think, because when you are under stress, the toxins raise, the production of stress chemicals goes crazy in your body. And what the tapping does, it's actually been scientifically proven that it reduces up to, I believe it's 42% reduction in cortisol level, which is your stress hormone, which is a huge difference. So when you do the tapping, that will calm you down so much more. And as I said, I have used the tapping since 2004 for everything. There's the other day, my computer wasn't starting and I started tapping on it. Not tapping on the computer, but tapping on me. Oh my God, the computer is broken. What am I going to do? This is terrible. I need to do this. I need to get this open. I need to get it finished. Everything, everything. Try tapping on everything. The first time that I ever experienced tapping was when I was in the middle of a panic attack. I was going through my certification training in NLP, which is neuro linguistic programming. And it was, we were doing preparations for presentations, end of the year presentations. And one of my peers was presenting triggered a fear, a terror, and an anxiety in me that just sent my nerves straight on edge. And as I said, I come from a really dysfunctional, abusive family background. After my mother and father divorced and my mother remarried, oh my God, my stepfather was a monster. He used to beat my baby brother and he sexually abused me. And something that my peer had said in the presentation, like, shut my brain down. And all I could see was this scene of a very, very vulnerable, frightening time that years and years and years of therapy was not able to touch in any way. I still reacted in that same primal, instinctive way by being afraid and sobbing. So my class was sitting in a semicircle watching the presentation. And I remember I had my hands on my knees, and I remembered being aware of the fact that my knees were jumping up and down. And my hands were trembling, my knees were trembling. And one of my colleagues, Gail, she must have been sitting across from me. She she said quietly, "Are you okay?" And I shook my head. No. So she came around and she kind of escorted me, pulled me out the door. And it was so surreal. As soon as the door closed, I remember sobbing hysterically. And I also remember her saying, through my tears, she said, "Andrea, I know it is, I know that you, I know it," her words, "Andrea, I know you don't know what it is that I do. What I do is I'm an emotional freedom technique practitioner. And if you'll allow me to tap on your hands and your face, I can help you." No, she said, "I think I can help you." She said, "Is that okay with you?" And I shook my head, yes. Then she said, "Can you speak?" And I felt this like a lump in my throat. I shook my head, no. She said, "That's okay." She said, "Can I start tapping?" And she started tapping on this part of my hand. She took both of my hands in her hands and she started tapping. And she said, "Can you hum?" And I went, mm. She said, "Okay, great." She said, "Just do that. And I'm just going to say some things. It's not going to make any sense to you." So there I was going, and all that I remember her saying was, even though, even though, even though. She said all these things, but the thing that stood out most in my memory is she said, "even though," as she was tapping. And this is the most extraordinary thing, is that when she was tapping, I remember she had a feather light touch, but I had this sense in my hands because she was tapping on my hands. It was almost as though she was whacking my hands with pillows. It was unbelievable. I felt this energy, this movement in my body that I could not place what it was. It was amazing. And she kept tapping, even though, and there were more words between that. And then she stopped and she said, "Can you speak?" And I was able to speak. And by then, I had also stopped crying. I was sobbing hysterically at first. And then basically, after, I'm going to say, she continued to tap, but she was tapping on different points. And I will show you again. She was tapping here, 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 tapping here. I do remember she asked if she could lift up my arm and tap. I said, yes. And on my head. And by that time, we were sitting by the window seat. And she asked me several questions about what it was that was so upsetting to me. And I remember she said, um, "We're not going to go into any of the details. Just think what it is that you're thinking about, and I'll just continue tapping on you." And I said, "Okay." And then I remember that over the next 10 or 15 minutes or so, it was almost like my thoughts were being twisted up inside because prior to that, I had felt so much suppressed rage toward my stepfather for doing the horrible things that he did and his friends. And I felt that I would never, ever forgive him. And I was very angry, but I was extremely uncomfortable being angry because I was raised to be a good girl. And good girls didn't express their emotions, not in my house. So I kept it under a lid. And so after she tapped on me and she went through maybe 15 minutes or so tapping on me, I came away from that with an extraordinary awareness of a sense of freedom that I never had before. Now, to clarify, when I went in, when she basically rescued me, when Gail rescued me and took me out of the room before I went into a full-scale panic attack, trouble breathing, sweating, shaking, all of that, she tapped on me and that stopped. I calmed down. The crying stopped. I was able to talk. I was able to think. It was amazing. And do you want to know where it was that the emotional leap that I took after she finished tapping on me? It was a realization that I absolutely had to forgive my stepfather. Holy crap! What did I say? The realization was that I had to forgive George, and it didn't even matter what he said. It was more important to free myself. I needed to cut ties with him so I would no longer feel imprisoned by this constant feeling of being a victim. I cannot even begin to describe to you how the tapping changed me from that day. Because prior to that, I was going to the therapist a couple of times a week. I basically had Ruth on speed dial. And every single thing that popped up in my life, Ruth, I need to talk to you. Can I come? I mean, wow. And so after I finished tapping with Gail, I'm a crier, okay? So I had tears in my eyes, but they were tears of joy. It was this tremendous sense of freedom that I had never felt before. And I realized that my path was to share this incredible gift with other women. This absolutely unbelievable gift of tapping. And that's what it is that I've been doing since 2004. And I have been through a lot of drama with my family. And because my parents divorced and my brother and I went to live with my mother and George, I've always wanted to do everything I could for my parents because I love them. It's called codependency. I took the role in my family, I took the role of being the rescuer. Andrea will fix it. Andrea will take care of it. Andrea will drop everything and run and take care of mom, dad, my brother David, everybody. Why am I telling you this? Um, I'm telling you this because, and this is also something that I share with my clients, is that when you do that, when you feel the need to take care of everybody outside of yourself, what's happening is you are depleting yourself. You only have a finite amount of energy. If you're constantly giving and giving and giving and giving and giving, eventually, at some point, you're going to get resentful. You're going to get tired. You're going to get angry because a lot of people, especially if they're toxic people, toxic personalities, they're just going to keep on taking. The more you want to give, the more they're just going to take and take and take and take and take until you have nothing left to give, until you're running on fumes. So I had that circumstance over and over and over in my life. That lesson was shown to me in so many ways. With my brother, he was this endless um, neediness of, just give and give and give, Andrea, and it was never good enough. Same with my father, same with my mother. And I thought the problem was me. And then when my husband passed away, and then when my husband passed away, we were married for nearly 33 years. I realized that 33 years of my life was sacrificed to give so much of my time to taking care of adults, my parents and my brother, who really didn't have the emotional capacity to love me. And by doing that, by giving so much of myself, I created so much drama in my life. And the depression that I went through after both my mother and my father kind of pushed me out of their life or betrayed me was extraordinary. And because it affected my sense of self and my ability to trust, parents, come on, how much more core can it be? I pushed everybody away. Pushed my husband away, I pushed my kids away, I pushed my friends away. I just wanted to be alone all the time. Well, my way of hiding was saying, working, going downstairs to work. Now, I don't know if you're anything like me, where what you have done is you have spent so much of your life giving and giving and giving and being this endless river of rescuing and taking care of and coddling and pleasing the people around you, and desperately wanting, yearning for some indication that they appreciate you, and you don't get it. That's a sign. That's a sign telling you, move on. Move on. Because we're not meant to live for other people, not to the extent that so many of us do. So I just wanted to share those thoughts with you and to give you that demonstration of emotional freedom technique. And another time, um, if you're watching on the replay, I look forward to having you come, and I'll actually show you how to do the tapping. And that way you will get an idea of how, think of it like a first aid kit. When you're in a situation, so for example, again, me with the ladder, right? I had that fear just wash over me early this morning, where I was just so afraid, and all of the anxiety and negative thoughts hit me, and I started tapping. It's exactly the same thing for everything. So it worked for me for changing the silly light bulb and getting up on the mirror and getting up on the ladder, and it has worked for a million things. After my husband passed away, wow, the financial consequences of his death were unbelievable. And soon after he passed away, I lost my home. And I went to live with my daughter and her husband, with my son as well. And I lost my job. And in losing my job, soon after, I couldn't afford to pay anything. I lost my car. I lost so many things. And at one point, after I was in the depths of depression, I started doing the tapping again. And I started focusing on just the next thing that I needed to do. And so I took those steps with the help of the tapping. So I'm going to stop the stream for now, and I will look forward to having you come for the next stream. And I just want to let you know that I know you're hurting right now. And I know you're feeling so many feelings. And I can tell you from personal experience that it will get better. And what I'm offering to teach you through the tapping, and also by sharing my insight and talking with you, is to give you ways of feeling that sense of better, whatever it is, however it looks to you. So just know that it will get better from where it is now. Okay. Talk to you soon. Bye now.